As the final week in May begins, Talking Point continues. Good morning and welcome to the program. My name is Keaton Shaw. It's a brand new day as we start the week off. A lot happened over the weekend, and nevertheless, we hope that you had a restful weekend, a peaceful weekend, and we thank you for joining us once more as we continue the conversations. Now, this morning as we start our program, I hope to speak specifically on the issues surrounding the unions in Trinidad and Tobago with regards to the wage increase of 2% over the last 8 years and the protest action that ensued, as well as the response from unions calling on the government to renegotiate, as well as for the country to shut down. There's also been a response on the part of the Prime Minister, who is asking unions not to overreact. But momentarily, we will dive into that discussion. Later on, we will welcome our guest, where we continue conversations of employment here in Trinidad and Tobago, focusing on youth employment. But alongside me this morning to have these conversations is, of course, my co-host, colleague, and good friend, Mr. Sean Michael Small. Good morning, Sean.
Good morning, Keaton. And it's interesting that we're stuck in this never-ending cycle of crying wolf. And the reason why I say that is I understand that a 2% offer out of context is not really something that is palatable to labor leaders. I get that. We're in a situation where people in the private sector have lost their jobs. And granted, while it is a wage increase that is meant to address the situation that happened for the last 7 years or so, from 2014 to 2021. It's still happening right now at a time where people in the private sector has lost their jobs, or their employers telling them there's no such thing as wage increases happening anytime soon, right? At a time when cost of living is going up. I get that. But we can't compare it to normal times. You compare it to what is happening throughout the entire labor market. You compare it to the fact that I'm sure there are people who had their wages cut during this situation. Have they been even established back to pre-pandemic levels yet? So, I notice, at least as far as I could tell, what you're going to hear, you're not going to hear anything about the current economic crisis from the people who are criticizing 2%. And then eventually when that's pointed out, they're going to say, well, don't use that as an excuse. That is reality. So, I'm sorry, but I cannot take you seriously if you're attempting to negotiate and you're attempting to make demands and you're attempting to call out injustice when you can't even give me proper reasoning to account for reality. And that is just one instance where, again, it's weird that no matter how many mistakes the government decides that it could do, and then gets caught, no matter how many times, somebody, somewhere, does something just as foolish or more so. And you just kind of wonder, well, and this is why we have this government, because I can't deal with those jokers. As something as basic as this, you're going to play politics in the most blatant, foolish, stupid way, as basic as this. I understand that there are people who are struggling. There are people in the private sector who are struggling too. So you need to tell me that this is not in line with the industry norms. And you know what? Maybe I'm wrong. But from my personal direct experience, I don't think I am.
Well, the offer, according to the president of the Amalgamated Workers Union, Michael Prentice, he's indicating that it is roughly a $2 increase a day. And for the Contractors and General Workers Trade Union President, Amin Debik, she said it's a collective agreement. They have offered them 15 cents per day of an increase. So overall, ladies and gentlemen, it obviously seems like a very, very low thing. But what we're going to do, we're going to take a quick break here on the program. And when we return, we're going to continue the conversation this morning as we dive in more into detail the discussions. Stay tuned to the program.
North Coast Jazz 2022. Day 2, Event 2. The big day is Family Saturday. And the biggest stars are performing on festival grounds. Michelle Sylvester, Ruel Lynch, Patrick Gordon, Adam Hagley featuring Tony Paul, Leandra Head, Johan Chuckery, Sharon Phillips, Freetown Collective, powered by festival band Dean Williams and Company. Each master talent will perform a song from Lord Nelson's wide catalogue. Saturday, Family, May 28th. Together again. Festival grounds, Blanchisseurs. Family, a tribute to Lord Nelson. North Coast Jazz and Heritage Festival 2022. 3 days, 3 events, 3 experiences. Born here, to laid here.
Get your tickets now at Crosby St. James, Extra Foods Arima, Sagre Grande, Grand Bazaar, Endeavour and Chaguanas, Digicel Twin City, C3 Mall, and Digicel Head Office, 11C Marval Road, WESN 38 Gattaca Street, Woodbrook, Suntix.com, or call our ticket hotline at 628-5835 or 681-1516. North Coast Jazz and Heritage Festival is brought to you with the kind support of the Inter-American Development Bank, Digicel, Angostura, Amco, Hadco, Blue Waters, Royal Castle, Gittins and Gittins Real Estate Agents, and WESN.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Sight, Thursdays at 11 a.m. Only on WESN, Content Capital.
Let your voice be heard. Call Madam Fix-It on WESN, the only place that effectively helps you with your woes. Having problems getting onto government agencies, water woes, NIS and pension problems, potholes, and much, much more. Call me, Madam Fix-It, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right here on WESN. Let me fix it for you.
Welcome back to the program. We apologize for that abrupt break, but as we continue the conversation this morning and focusing specifically on the offer of 2% over the last 8 years, there are a couple of things to consider. First of all, as pointed out by my co-host and colleague, the cost of living has increased dramatically. The COVID-19 pandemic and the subsequent lockdown resulting from the pandemic did not help the situation. More or less, the country was shut down for 2 years, where government workers continued to receive salaries as per usual. Now, the unemployment rate here in Trinidad and Tobago has also increased, with the labor force participation rate, has also dropped. So with all that to consider, is it fair, the stance on the part of the unions calling for the country to shut down? Whilst I understand that they want the best for their workers, for their members, and whilst they're fighting in the best interest, calling for a shutdown is not going to help anything. In fact, it is in my opinion that the union leaders are not acting as leaders. If they were acting as leaders, it would be most appropriate for them to continue negotiations rather than this hard and fast approach that they're taking. And I totally understand and respect the roles of the unions, but I disagree with their approach. One of the policies I believe that we need to implement. Because the unions, in my opinion, are not just threatening the government. They're threatening society. They're threatening Trinidad and Tobago, the citizens and the people of Trinidad and Tobago. With that, I firmly believe that a new policy should be implemented. In my opinion, no work, no pay.
Well, not only that, but I think now members of unions need to understand that they're shooting themselves in the foot with the way how their own leaders are negotiating. Because the leaders are negotiating in a very selfish manner, in a very short-sighted manner. Now, maybe it is the directive that the workers give them, but again, it's a very short-sighted manner. One of the reasons why tourism is such a important issue for me is that back in 2019, my family has a business in tourism. Now, in one part of the business, it's not a big business, but in one of the significant parts of the business, my brother spent significant effort back in 2019, so this is before the pandemic. Tourism was going so bad, he spent significant effort to make sure that nobody lost their job. Mm-hmm. He did everything he could to keep all his employees. Then the pandemic comes, and he has to shut down multiple times. Because what is the point of having a hotel open and a restaurant open when you can't serve food in your restaurant, when the beaches are closed, when people can't really fly over in significant numbers? You can't pay your bills because everybody has to work off of weekend sales. All hotel occupants in the island has to earn their money off of 2 to 3 nights a week, generally speaking, during a pandemic, because hotels weren't forced to close, but the situation around them, for all intents and purposes, forced them to close. And more or less all of those employees, I don't know exactly what they did to survive. I just knew that since we had no revenue coming in and tea and tech bills to keep paying, despite the fact that no electricity was being used, they more or less lost their jobs for the better part of 2 years. So now that we have union leaders coming to the government saying, this is insulting, I'm sorry, but I honestly don't care. And you have just proven to me once again that you don't care about anything else but yourselves. So go ahead and cry all the crocodile tears. At this point, now I understand. I am just cemented in the fact that I believe what the government did with closing on Petrosyan was correct.
Well, I appreciate your opinion. I for one, think that saying that you don't care is a bit harsh. And though
they don't care about me.
Though I respect your point, my particular approach to this is, okay, fine, fair enough. I also am now going to try and be fair to the unions and look at the rhetoric on the part of the government. Last week, we had the mid-year budget review, 1 week ago. That was presented in Parliament by the Minister of Finance. And when you are constantly giving this positive rhetoric of things are fine, we are in a recovery mode, the economy is doing much better than expected, we are no longer in the negative, we're in the positive. And that's what we're seeing. Mm-hmm. And this is tremendous effort on the part of the government. And you do not actually paint the reality of the situation. You do not add context to what you're seeing. It's like you have a document in front of you and you're only highlighting the things that you want to be said because it makes it sound so good, so revered. That does not help the situation going forward, because now the unions could use that against the government. The unions could use that as a rebuttal and an argument against the government's stance and approach. My thing is that government workers, compared to private sector workers, there are a lot more benefits working within the public service compared to the private sector. With the unions, if they want to shut down the country, the government also needs to take an approach of no work, no pay. But I much rather see a University of the West Indies student, a graduate from university or UTT, I much rather see a student who is qualified, who is now coming out of the market, looking for opportunities, willing and wanting to work. And by the way, they cannot get opportunities now. I believe we have every year at least 1,700 plus graduates from the University of the West Indies alone. It could be more because the intake at the university is a lot greater, although students do actually fall out, they drop out year after year. I'm just saying, I much rather see a University of the West Indies or UTT student graduate and get that opportunity as they exit school, because I'll be very honest with you, it is difficult for me to try and stand with the unions with their entire approach to the situation. And maybe you can make the argument, well, they're just reciprocating what they feel is being dealt to them, what they feel is being given to them on the part of the government.
No.
But I don't think that it is fair.
No,
I don't think that it is fair.
because a lot of people want to cry crocodile tears about Petrotrin, but I followed the stories. It was year upon year upon year where they basically fought the government down. And it's almost as though the unions are oblivious to reality. So your point that you made, I understand your point, and it's a fair point, except this. You're saying they could use the government's positive message against them. The problem is, it's not as though the government is hiding half of the revenue and half of the expenditure, right? And doing whatever it is that they want to do with it. It's not as though they're telling us, well, you know, we all have to take cuts, and then they're making all sorts. Well, they are making a vanity project, but I mean, we're not talking. Give us widespread corruption or give us a money trail to say, well, this is where the money is, and it shouldn't be here. It should be with us. Fine, maybe I'll accept that. But until we get some indication that there's money to be had, I have to go with the assumption that, listen, money is tight. Why? Because money is tight everywhere, and we see it. We see it and we feel it. And what you're telling me is that the unions are willfully ignorant and are willfully fooling their membership, right, with this nonsense. And at the end of the day, between Petrotrin, between Tutor, and now this, I have no reason, I have lost all faith that the unions speak in good faith anymore. I've lost all of it, with maybe one or two exceptions. But I don't think the oil workers trade union speaks in good faith. I don't think Tutor speaks in good faith. I am starting to question Natuk and Mr. Anisette. I understand that it's not an easy position to be in. However, there's a time to be responsible for your own members, and that's always been my argument. It's not about be responsible for the country, be responsible for me, be responsible for you. It's about being responsible for your own members, because Roger was not responsible for the members of the OWTU, and then Petrotrin got closed as a result because he tried to do the right thing at the 11th hour when the government said it was too late.
Listen, the thing is, folks, is that over the COVID-19 pandemic, and even prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, when we were actually trending downhill in terms of our economics, everybody had to make a sacrifice. We've all had to make sacrifices, not only for businesses to survive, but businesses to continue where they're able to keep all their employees at a certain level. It's been tough for everyone. The unfortunate thing is that sitting in this position is very difficult because these government workers actually never had to take a pay cut. None of them saw a decrease in their salary, and whilst many of them were sitting at home and spending time with their families over the last 2 years, we were out here working. And people might say, well, Keaton, that's totally unfair. It's two different positions, two different perspectives. But they received their full salary, whilst us who continued working had to make sacrifices. Now, the issue is that they are actually receiving an increase. And you can understand why they would want more money is because they want to maintain their lifestyle. They want to maintain their standard of living. But so do we all. We all want that.
In the words of Watson Duke, it's not just to prevent a wage decrease, prevent any retrenchment. It's to get wage increases for their high-paying jobs. That's the words he spoke publicly.
The purchasing
for
power...
For their high-paying jobs.
The purchasing power of each and every individual, each and every citizen in Trinidad and Tobago has decreased dramatically. For some, it's completely diminished. But at the end of the day, this is not even negotiating. This is the unions asking for street fights. I was actually rather surprised and very much at the same time appreciative of the calm and collective response, in my opinion, from Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley. Now, that may change, you never know. But at this point in time, I am telling the union leaders that you all are not negotiating. You all are asking for a street fight. And it makes no sense when you don't have an argument. They've said that they've taken the economic impact of COVID-19 into consideration.
Really?
I don't necessarily think so. I truly
No,
don't.
they have. It is the I don't care, or it is the by our calculations we could squeeze for this much. Instead of getting 10%, we could get 9.5. That's what they take it into consideration. I mean, let's put it this way. There are some nations, rich nations, where a government job is seen, ultimately speaking, as not a high-paying job. Public service is not a career that you do to get money. Even for people in high office, they don't get rich off of their salary. They get rich afterwards, and when they retire and they go on the lecture circuit, they get rich off of their accomplishments in the private sector. Why is it in this country public sector jobs, government jobs are so in demand?
Well,
so in demand.
People crave as soon as they graduate from university. I am telling you this from my own experience, just talking to graduates and students. People crave and look forward to working in the government service.
That is the ultimate ambition for far too many people I know in Tobago, right? And I could speak to that because I was there. I can't speak to that in Trinidad specifically. However, generally, I think it is the same. Particularly for the same reason. You get money and you're not held accountable. Basically speaking, you're not held accountable. Right? So until I hear talk about unions saying we're going to go to a merit-based system so that our best workers will be rewarded the most as they deserve, until I hear things like that, until I hear things about how we need to all band together to make sure recovery goes well, so that no more state entities need to be closed down because of their inefficiency and money-losing ways, then I will maybe take union leaders seriously. But I can't right now.
So if the government wants, my apologies, if the unions want a street fight, then the government needs to remain cool, calm, and collective. And they need to approach this with greater respect for themselves and greater dignity. And by the way, I'm speaking specifically about union leaders, because we don't hear often from union members. We see them participating in protests and whatnot. But this is going to union leaders. If this is the stance that you're taking, and if this is the hard and fast approach, no problem. I ask the government to consider a no-work, no-pay policy. And let's just say that if after 2 weeks we cannot come to a conclusion and workers are still wanting to shut down the country and not work while continuing to receive their salary, you give them the option. You can come back out to work. You can receive your full salary as you have been over the last 2 years. You can receive the great amount of benefits that you have been receiving. And if that may not be the case and not satisfactory to you, because like I said before, all of us have had to make sacrifices. Don't think for one moment that because Sean and I host a television show that we are swimming in dollars. Not for one moment. At the end of the day, if you do not want that, sure, we'll negotiate with you. And that is, you can have your job, or we can find a university graduate who is willing to take that job, work for that decent salary, and have those benefits.
That's a way to get dividends off a gate.
And exactly, we're providing the employment. So to me, that's an approach that could be considered.
Like I said, lack of leadership is not just from politicians. It is not just from politicians. And here is just another example.
I do not expect any union leader to lecture a politician on leadership. Likewise, I do not expect any politician to lecture, at least the current state that we have, to lecture any union leader on leadership. That's my opinion. Folks, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a break here now on the program, and when we return, we welcome our guests this morning to continue the conversations. We were speaking about employment and other opportunities. As you know, Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley, he returned from Ghana yesterday, and we'll take a look at that. Stay tuned to the program.
Want all the info on North Coast Jazz 2022? Get the all-new North Coast Jazz mobile app for Android and iOS devices. The #1 jazz event in the country returns for its 4th installment with 3 days of activities, May 27th to 29th. Download the app now and get all the info you need to get pumped and plan for the event. Ticket purchasing, event schedule, artist lineup, places to stay, places to eat, activities in the area, and more. Stay on top with all the latest updates with the all-new North Coast Jazz mobile app for Android and iOS devices. Developed by Weebala. Download now. North Coast Jazz 2022 Festival Grounds Blanchisseuse, May 27th to 29th. Born here, played here.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing on it.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is it no pressure on Nicholas Paul?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
North Coast Jazz 2022. You asked for it. Consider it done. Park in comfort at the Queen's Park Savannah and ride in style to festival grounds for the biggest family event. North Coast Jazz and Heritage Festival. Park, ride, enjoy. It's all about family. Family Saturday, May 28th. Together again. Festival grounds, Blanchisseuse. Family. A tribute to Lord Nelson. North Coast Jazz and Heritage Festival. Born here, played here.
Get your tickets now at Crosby St. James, Extra Foods Arima, Sagre Grande, Grand Bazaar, Endeavour and Chaguanas, Digicel Trin City, C3 Mall, and Digicel Head Office, 11C Marval Road, WESN, 38 Gattaca Street, Woodbrook, Suntix.com, or call our ticket hotline at 628-5835 or 681-1516. North Coast Jazz and Heritage Festival is brought to you with the kind support of the Inter-American Development Bank, Digicel, Angostura, Amco, Hadco, Blue Waters, Royal Castle, Gittins & Gittins Real Estate Agents, and WESN.
Welcome back, ladies, to Talking Point. Well, over the course of the last week, our Prime Minister has gone to Guyana as a part of a delegation, leading a delegation of TNT, in order to secure various trade agreements or negotiate with the various countries participating in the forum, specifically with regards to agriculture, food security, and the Prime Minister has made several statements to that effect since last week. And then it came to the understanding that a memorandum of understanding was going to be signed between our country and Guyana. And that caused the Guyana Chamber of Commerce and Industry to raise a red flag. They wanted to stick a pause on that because they had issues. Well, an important topic like this, at the end of the day, the issues seem to have been smoothed over, at least for now, and our two nations have signed that memorandum of understanding. Joining with us to speak about that, as well as other topics with regards to our economy and I guess you could say the wider situation and how it impacts us. We have with us Dr. Indira Sajiwan, an economist and a strategic consultant. Good morning, Dr. Sajiwan.
Good morning, Sean. Good morning, Keaton.
Good morning.
So, first thing that I want to ask you, Dr. Sajiwan, is if you could help us understand just exactly what was the non-tariff barriers. What exactly does that mean? Most people understand tariffs, taxes on imports. What were the non-tariff barriers that was the sticking point for some of the Guyanese businessmen? And do you think that it's simple and easy for TNT to move on from them?
Okay, so if I could just put the whole, I think what is happening in Guyana is the Guyana government actually has expressed an interest in entering into memorandums of understanding with different governments. In fact, they actually signed a similar agreement. It was done with respect to some of the smaller islands. And in the case of Trinidad and Tobago, it's the only country that you had the business sector in Guyana, raising a red flag and saying, hold a minute. And I think it's largely because of the what we call non-tariff barriers that prevent many Guyanese products, especially agricultural products, from being able to enter the Trinidad and Tobago market. And people may have heard the use of the word phytosanitary impediments, where for especially agricultural produce, if a country doesn't want the produce from another country to enter its market, that is one measure that is available to it. What it argues is that if it allows raw agricultural products to come into the market, it could be opening its doors to pest diseases that probably are plaguing the agricultural sector from the country that it will be importing from. So one major area I know that has been a major point of contention for Guyana for quite a while is the whole issue of honey and their inability to be able to export honey into the Trinidad and Tobago economy. Now, this is a double-edged sword, Sean and Keaton, because honey, the Trinidad and Tobago honey is a honey that is probably the most pest-resistant in the entire region, if not in the entire world. And it is something that we really need to protect very carefully, and we really need to ensure that we don't allow honeys that come into the country that may have a lot of antibodies, etc., which when their time elapsed, they could have hosts that could actually infect our bee population. That is something we have to be very careful about. Outside of the fact that we're not doing very much to support our local, from a policy perspective, we're not doing anywhere sufficient to support our apiary and our honey production industry. In addition to which, we do have on our shelves imported honey coming from far and wide. So it is it's on the shelves, the imported honey. So I guess from a Guyana perspective, it would be, well, if you can, whether it is legal or illegal that honey is coming in, why not the honey from Guyana? So they have a legitimate argument with respect to that, but I want to say that it's something we have to be careful about. There are other produce as well. So, for example, if you take pineapples could only come from Guyana, a country that produces pine year-round at volumes that we can't even start to imagine. But you can't bring pines into Trinidad and Tobago unless you remove the head. And if you remove the head, it affects the ripening process. So that would affect the final product when it comes into the market. So it is a difficulty for them, obviously. Now, we do have a thriving pineapple industry as well. And so that there could be the notion of competition. We've been talking a lot about processing for very, very many years, setting up a processing plant. I'm not sure that is actually happening, given that you see most of the pineapples where farmers try to just sell it on the retail market. And I could go on and on. But basically, these are sanctions that is not a clear tariff. So it's not that they're saying you're subject to a 50% tariff on your produce to enter my market, but where we use other things, health-related things, disease-related things, to say that your produce cannot enter. And I have argued for a very, very long time that the Caribbean as a whole is an issue that we need to address. If I could talk about very quickly our fresh juice industry. Our fresh juice industry was thriving until we had the closure of Caroni Limited. And government policy really killed that industry. When Caroni was closed, the entire orchard that the industry depending on was simply just shut down. And that source of supply really just dried up. And then you had that industry having a really hard time, still having a hard time in terms of sourcing fresh oranges for their produce. Now, why aren't we able to source it from our neighboring islands, from Guyana, from the smaller islands? And again, phytosanitary restrictions prevent that from being able to happen. We are one Caribbean, and I am one who very strongly believe we have a University of the West Indies. We need to ensure safety and security, but it is something that we need to address to allow it to happen.
Well, Dr. Sejuan, and I'm glad you brought up the University of the West Indies. In a moment, I'll head into that particular area of discussion. But focusing on what you just mentioned, whilst I understand the need for such restrictions, especially to protect our produce, such as honey, as you mentioned, I do recall President of Guyana, Mohamed Irfan Ali, mentioning that there is the ability, the availability, and the capacity for Guyana not only to send food to Trinidad and Tobago, but for Trinidad and Tobago to establish a food processing market where we are able to gain produce from Guyana and we're able to process it and package it here. Those restrictions that you just mentioned, is it hindering that from developing in itself?
Absolutely. And again, this is something that I've articulated for a very long time. It has to be one Caribbean. The approach to agriculture and food security must be a Caribbean, a single Caribbean initiative. And I too have articulated the very thing that the current president is saying, because you have countries like Guyana, like Belize, very, very large land space where they can produce at significant volume in terms of the primary produce. And you have a Trinidad and Tobago that is more industrialized, where we have an established manufacturing sector. We have the comparative advantage there. And therefore, I see opportunities for joint venture arrangements, because one of the things that I imagine the Guyanese business will complain about is that why should we only get the lower value aspect of the market, which is to just produce the primary produce and not where the real value is produced in processing. But I would articulate and take it one step further, is that here is opportunity for joint venture arrangements between business persons from whether it is Guyana or Suriname or Belize and Trinidad and Tobago, so that the entire project is seen from farm to supermarket shelf. It is seen as a complete project where you can have investments that ensures that the sharing of the profit throughout the value chain is in an equitable manner. So there is so much opportunity, and in the context of a global, where the global market is with respect to its capacity to be able to supply food in this moment, coming out of COVID, given the population growth that is anticipated to take place over the next several years, there is an anticipation that there's going to be a serious shortage of food, especially basic food. And therefore, it is an area, food is going to be the new gold or the new natural gas for the region. If we are strategic, if we look at where demand is going more in the area of organic food, of specialty foods, which we, because of climate, soil conditions, etc., we have the natural competitive advantage to be able to produce. So we have to be extremely strategic. And if we are, we can be a significant player in the world market in niche food production.
Well, Dr. Sejuan, you gave us an example of where a lack of government support caused an industry to be imperiled, to put it one way. Now, we, of course, need those non-tariff barriers to be removed in order for certain agricultural products to even be allowed in. So the hopes for a joint venture has to start from there. But once those non-tariff barriers are removed, right, this could be the answer to maybe you could say the government's strategy where diversification is always seems to be slow to happen. And I guess you could say the private sector might be looking to invest, but it's not so simple. But with Guyana, that could be the source of the raw materials. Is there enough, once the non-tariff barriers to be removed, for the private sector to say, hey, look, let's just move ahead? Or do we have to have the government involved in this process? Do we need the government to be significantly involved in this process in all areas for it to really get anywhere?
Absolutely, there's always a role for government. And we're not just only, I mean, in this instance, we're talking about Guyana, but we could also add, as I'm saying, Suriname, we could add Belize in terms of Caribbean economies with large land mass that have the capacity to produce the primary produce that is required for value adding and manufacturing and export, okay? So again, I'm saying it's a one Caribbean kind of initiative. Government strategic role has to be one in terms of removing the policy impediments, so the non-tariff barriers. But in order to do that, you need to strengthen your capacity at establishing standards and monitoring standards. So these things are extremely important. There is a strong role for research and development. So again, tie back into something like the universities that we have a University of Guyana, we have a University of Suriname, we have a University of Trinidad and Tobago, we have a University of the West Indies. So these are research institutions. In the case of the University of the West Indies, founded on agriculture. So there has to be a role for these institutions. There has to be a very strong role for a standards, one regional standards institution. Like, so let me give you another example. I just did some work on value adding out of agriculture in Grenada for the UNDP. And one area that I focused on was value added out of cocoa. And in discussion with one particular business in Grenada, she made a point where in order to export, you need to have nutritional facts on the labels of the products that you are exporting. Because to secure that for Grenada, per product, so per label, was $700 US from Caribbean, Trinidad and Tobago, $1,200 US from a United States organization, both prohibitive for small-scale production and export. She was able, though, interestingly, to source the labeling out of India for $50 US per label. But this is an area that, as a region, we need to address. So, and even the issues of testing and ensuring things like establishing shelf lives, etc. We have Caribbean, Trinidad and Tobago, but the cost factor is something that needs to be addressed because it becomes prohibitive for small producers who are trying to move product up the value chain. So there are many, many issues that needs to be addressed, Keaton and Sean, for us to get to where we need to. The whole issue of labor is another area that we need to talk about, because if you look at Trinidad and Tobago, our agricultural sector has very long argued that they have a serious constraint of being able to access labor to simply work the fields, because Trinidadians are simply not interested in working the fields. So from a Caribbean-wide perspective, where maybe we need something that is similar to what Canada has, where you allow labor to come in from the region, that is, to be able to work our farms, because it is not as Trinidad is going to stop producing goods and services. We have a comparative advantage, for example, in the production of hot peppers. That's not something we want to throw away. That's something we want to nurture and cultivate. So, and there are other obvious areas as well. So the policy environment really is the one that really has to take care. Governments are the ones that have to really address some of these issues if we want food production to really take off any way that we can. But it has to be more than talk, guys, because for too long, in 2012, there was a CARICOM development strategy for agriculture that set a lot of very ambitious targets in terms of regional agriculture, and very little has been done to be able to move that agenda forward. So we have to have less talk, less documents that sits on shelf, and more in terms of action and doing in order to move the process forward.
Dr. Sajiwa, before I shift across to Labour, I really want to, just to get your perspective, in your opinion, do you believe that public investment, and I say government investment or interest in Ghana is far behind that of private investments in Ghana? Because I see quite a lot of local companies now not only investing in assets within Ghana, but just based off of what you're mentioning here, I'm just wondering if we haven't taken that relationship or the opportunities as seriously as the private sector has.
Well, when you say we have to include the private sector, right? Because a country comprises both the public and the private sector.
Fair enough.
And you want the investors to be private sector. And private investors, their ultimate objective is to make a profit. And they will put their money and their resources wherever they see that opportunity. It is no secret that our energy sector is very mature and on the downward trend, unless by some miracle we can get some huge finds of gas and hopefully oil, which doesn't look promising in the near future. Many local private sector investors in the energy sector would have been in the areas of the services aspect, where they would have gotten into investment that service the core element of the energy sector. And now, given what is happening in Guyana and what is happening to be very where there's a lot of growth that is anticipated for quite some time to come, it is obviously an attractive place to be and to look at getting in, especially at the ground level, to be able to take advantage. And we see that happening. We see our businesses and doing that. And not just, I think, in the energy-related sector, but even in the other sectors, because here is an economy where the demand for goods and services outside of just energy-related is going to, and has already started to grow exponentially. And so in areas such as entertainment, restaurants, etc., all of these are areas in Ghana that will be ripe for the taking. And I know for a fact that many of our private sector investors are heavily invested there. Suriname is another place that they are going. So when we look at the issue in terms of attractiveness, the reality is, unfortunately, that Trinidad and Tobago, we dropped the ball. We continue to drop the ball. I guess we keep trying to juggle the ball, but we're not very good at it, and the ball keeps falling because we seem to no longer be an attractive place for investment. Yeah. I did some work recently, and I showed where foreign direct investment, from 1995 to now, with the exception of the period when the energy sector was at its peak in terms of new investment, with the exception of that period, the trend in foreign direct investment coming into Trinidad and Tobago has been on the decline, and it is actually in the negative. So we are not doing very good in terms of attracting foreign investment here. When you look at the trends with respect to the private sector borrowing from banks for investment purpose, that too has been on a downward trend. So we are in a difficult position, the economy of Trinidad and Tobago.
Well, as you mentioned that we are in a difficult position, I know that last week in another interview you mentioned the issue of youth unemployment. Now, youth unemployment, the rate in 2019 was 9.12%, and I'm almost certain that would have increased over the course of the pandemic. I know that the government also put a one-year freeze on hiring of new public servants. We have University of the West Indies graduates, UTC graduates every year. There was an issue with GATE where we weren't able for students to actually fulfill their obligations, even with scholarships. The problems that you just mentioned there, foreign direct investment on the decline, and our public sector spending and debt that's also increased, especially with the loans that we have taken. Are those just some of the reasons why it's very difficult for youth, let alone adults, but more so those who have just qualified to find jobs here in Trinidad and Tobago?
Yes, Keaton, we are investing significantly in education, but we're not investing heavily in development. Mm-hmm. We're not investing in growing the economy of Trinidad and Tobago, of growing the productive sectors, because at the end of the day, the objective can't be that we only graduate X thousands of young persons out of university. We fail them if there are not sectors that can absorb them. And that is exactly what is happening right now. And we're talking about doctors, lawyers, engineers, management students, graduates. We're talking about across the board. The economy of Trinidad and Tobago is not producing jobs that can absorb these young professionals. And that is extremely frustrating to them. It is frustrating to your growth agenda, because how is the growth going to take place if your educated class is unable to find jobs and is unable to make the kinds of investments that are required to stimulate activity in other sectors, such as housing, such as, the purchasing of various furniture for their homes or cars, etc. If they are unable to have the capacity to do that, then you will really not doing what is necessary in order to grow the economy. So the imperative, and I think I've been belaboring this for years now, the imperative in this economy is economic growth through diversification, not just dependent on oil and gas. The Minister of Finance, knock his chest and knock the chest of the government in terms of the reduction in the debt to GDP ratio from 83% that the CSO has it at in 2021 within a few months to 72%. But that has nothing to do with deliberate action. We didn't need to increase the production of gas by 1 or the production of oil by 1 for that to happen. It simply happened, I have said, on the graves of innocent persons who died in a war in Ukraine, the war between Ukraine and Russia.
Yes.
That caused a shortage in the supply and pushed the price of gas and oil up. Now, it had already started to trend upwards coming as we started to come out of COVID. But the kind of acceleration in terms of price increase that we are seeing now, would not have happened. So that we have a windfall that is coming in now. That is very real. What we do with this windfall is extremely important. And, we keep saying that every time this economy has a boom, and unfortunately, government goes into a spending in terms of supporting recurrent expenditure, maybe paying off debt, doing things that are not strategic in terms of growth. I've also been looking at our PSIP, and our PSIP has been, which is the Public Sector Investment Program. So when you talk about private sector investment, Keaton, a little while ago, the expenditure through the PSIP is what is used in order to expand infrastructure or invest directly in productive sectors for growth to take place, for us to really push the productive frontier outwards. And that has been flat.
Dr. Sijiwan.
It has been at 3.5 billion, stuck for quite some years.
Dr. Sijiwan, I must apologize to you where we'll have to end this particular interview. I do hope that you would make more time for us very soon, because I very much want to continue the conversation, focusing specifically on youth unemployment in Trinidad and Tobago. And I'm very happy that you mentioned we have a lot of young professionals. But something you also mentioned earlier in relation, for example, farmers in Trinidad and Tobago, there seems to be a shortage of labor. So how do we make those industries, besides industries that are already saturated, such as medical professionals, lawyers, and whatnot, how do we make those industries attractive for those? So I appreciate your time, and I appreciate you sharing with us your knowledge, and I look forward to continuing the discussion with you very soon.
Yeah, and hopefully also on another date on agriculture, because a lot of what you said there, I think that's also what people need to hear.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sijiwan.
Happy to speak to you all at any time.
Thank you. Take care and keep well. Folks, WESN now breaks for news on the hour, and when we return, well, we'll open up the phone lines this morning. Stay tuned.
North Coast Jazz 2022. After Family Saturday, the sky ignites with Blue Sunday, where Juve meets Pan meets Soca. Juve meets Pan meets Soca. A Juve experience featuring Hatco's Phase 2 Pan Groove, Mixmaster DJs, and powerful soca. Witness the expression of a new-found freedom with paint and vibes. Dance along to the music of our national instrument. Blue Sunday. Blue Sunday. A colorful experience. A tradition you won't want to miss.
Looking for somebody to jam with me and have some fun. Juve.
Sunday, May 29th, Festival Grounds, Blanchisseuse. North Coast Jazz and Heritage Festival 2022. 3 days, 3 events, 3 experiences. Born here, played here.
Tickets available at Crosby St. James, Extra Foods Arima, Grand Bazaar, Endeavour and Chaguanas, Extra Foods Sagre Grande, Digicel, Trin City and Gulf City Malls, WESN, 38 Gattaca Street, Woodbrook, Suntix.com, or call our ticket hotline at 628-5835 or 681-1516.
Seven is out, all day is in. WESN News on the hour.
Every day, we communicate through stories. Stories of ourselves, our challenges, our goals, our experiences, and our aspirations. Storytelling is an art that we have mastered. WESN Film Studios comprises a collaborative team of experts with extensive industry experience locally, regionally, and internationally. The ability of your business to successfully communicate with your preferred audience depends on the strength of the stories you tell. Your vision should be communicated in a high-quality, professional, and creative way. From concept to post-production, advertising to film, multi-camera productions, live events, streaming, and virtual conferencing, we are WESN Film Studio. Let your own unique voice be heard and your vision realized. Call us today at 628-5835 for your next production.
Let your voice be heard. Call Madam Fix-It on WESN, the only place that effectively helps you with your woes. Having problems getting onto government agencies, water woes, NIS and pension problems, potholes, and much, much more. Call me, Madam Fix-It, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right here on WESN. Let me fix it for you.
Burning questions, urgent topics. Welcome back to One on One, the show where we tackle the most current and pertinent subjects that are affecting all citizens, where we ask the hard questions and have in-depth conversations. What separates One on One from other talk shows is that the conversation stems from a younger perspective on topics that affect the fabric of our society. One on One, Wednesdays at 10 a.m. on WESN Content Capital.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Sight, Thursdays at 11 a.m. only on WESN Content Capital.
I am Rondell Donowa, attorney at law and host of Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Strictly Legal is a legal program geared towards informing you, the public, of your legal rights, responsibilities, and remedies. So be viewing Thursdays 10 a.m. to 10:30 a.m.
A reminder from WESN. We urge you to protect yourself and others from the spread of COVID-19. Stay safe by taking some simple precautions. Clean your hands often. Use soap and water or an alcohol-based hand rub. Maintain a safe distance from anyone who is coughing or sneezing. Wear a mask. Don't touch your eyes, nose, or mouth. Cover your nose and mouth with your bent elbow or a tissue when you cough or sneeze. Stay at home. If you have a fever, cough, and difficulty breathing, seek medical attention. Following the above can help us all to help each other.
Welcome back to Talking Point here on WESN. It's a bit of a cool Monday morning. We had some rain over the weekend. There was a tropical wave that was passing over us, but the Sahara dust levels were exceedingly high. I mean, it was very difficult to see the mountains, even when you're living near to the mountains and you just really, the visibility is so bad. You're wondering, is that mist or is that Saharan dust? And then as the rain fell and you realize you saw those brown droplets of water hitting your car that you just got washed, boy, does your heart break. But anyway, folks, we're very happy.
I think that happened to you.
Of course.
Okay.
Just my luck. Always
Just
my
your-
luck.
yeah.
As soon as they finish wiping your car, that last wipe.
God
with a
never,
sham.
God never puts on our shoulders more than we can bear, Keaton. Folks, let's open up phone lines. As you know, this is the time when we want to hear from you, the viewer. Do you agree with my harsh criticism of the union leaders and their stance, of which, if you might not have gathered, I am completely fed up at this point. So call in, have your say. We already have a call from San Fernando. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, caller.
Morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Three quick points.
Yeah.
The first one was I didn't get a chance last week when you had Faith B. Israel on your program.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
My issue is with Dr. Israel and this new THA. They seem not to want to advance from their election pivoting to governance. This aggression that they still hold against the establishment, which is, in their words, the people in the government in Trinidad, the government in Trinidad, they have this aggression against the government in Trinidad, and they need to move away from that and start to govern. I mean, they are neophytes in the game, but they have, I understand the internal self-government issues, but they have to work together. You can't oppose everything. You want to oppose the airport. You want to oppose the, what you call it, the marina.
Well, if you're opposing everything, oppose it with good reason and good arguments.
Right. And I agree. The other thing,
Go ahead, caller.
the other thing I looked at the Police Service Commission on the Parliament channel there with the Joint Select Committee.
Yes.
And the chairman of that,
Retired Justice Julius Jones.
I was disappointed for the mere fact that anytime questions were asked in the main to other members of the PSC, she intervened and answered. That is like the principal trying to protect the students in a school.
I understand what you're saying.
I was so disappointed with that.
But caller, listen, I must apologize to you, but I know you had a third point. If you just, we have other callers waiting. So go ahead, make your other point.
And my other point is, well, no, go ahead. Peter,
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead. I do apologize, but it's just because. But go ahead, make your point.
Well, you're making this much out there.
Oh boy! All right.
You know what? I must apologize to you, but call us back in. I want to hear your third point.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, caller. Caller on the line with us from Chaguanas. Good morning.
Good morning, Professor.
Why all you continue all the union bashing? I have repeatedly proven to you that the union do their job too well. And the person
disagree.
who do not do their own is the government.
I disagree.
You disagree?
I
You think
disagree.
The government do their good?
No. I'm not saying the government did their work, but I disagree that the union did their job too well. The government gave them a...
The revenue.
Sorry, Professor,
Not only they're
make
not
your point.
collecting the revenue,
Uh-huh.
they're destroying their own revenue base.
Mm-hmm.
I have gone through this in detail with property tax, and your colleague have never shown where government-appointed team advised that the government property tax be transferred to the regional authority, but they do the opposite. You don't shoot yourself in the foot and then blame other people.
But
Professor, listen, if I may just interject, if I may just simply say that I understand your argument in relation to the government.
No, I don't understand yours.
I'm not. Hold on. I'm not doubting your argument. I agree with a lot of what you said. However, I must take the stance in disagreeing that in your saying that the unions have done too good of a job. I am so sorry. I mean, Professor, you're a very smart individual, and if you can look at me and tell me that the union leaders are doing well in negotiating, then Professor, you're fooling yourself.
They don't negotiate.
But they have done well.
No, but
People
Professor,
have complained that salary is too high.
But Professor, they make demands for salaries. That's all they make demands for. There's no other negotiation for no other area. And look what happened to
unions have gotten other benefits from government.
Look what happened to Petrotrin. I would argue that the OWTU shot themselves in the foot with how they handled those negotiations.
No, Professor.
Already proven to you.
Yes, Professor.
Right?
You have already proven to us. And
didn't listen.
all right, Professor. Professor, thank you. I'm sorry I have to cut you, but we have other callers. Thank you.
Professor, while that might be true, even if that was true, how they negotiated the situation did not prevent what happened with the closure.
Professor, thank you very much. But I think you also need to understand. I mean, you're a smart man. You can't tell me that unions are doing very well at negotiating. I mean, as soon as if they could fight for all the money they want, as soon as they can fix the issues in relation to efficiency amongst their workers, amongst government offices, because it's bloated as it is. But if they can fix that, we have a negotiation.
Because if they don't, the employer might implode.
We have all that, by the way, is an argument against privatization if they're able to actually fix that. We have a caller on the line with us from Tobago. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, sir. Sorry to keep you waiting.
We've had a wonderful weekend, a safe weekend.
Yes, we did. We hope you did as well.
Dan, yeah, sorry that the Sahara dust is giving you such pain. But someone told me, I just learned this, I don't know how factual it is, I have to research it, that the Sahara dust actually brings a lot of minerals into the soil.
That is possible.
Yes. I've heard that as well.
Is that true? Yeah. So like Sean said, it's a blessing. Just like the sargassum is probably a blessing to us, and we just don't know it yet.
I think the sargassum is a blessing. I think you could extract that and make products from that.
Caller, it's a blessing for the soil. It might not be a blessing for our lungs. So there's a catch, you know. It's something that we do have to compensate for or treat with properly.
Yeah. But I want to comment real quick on Sean's disapproval or pushback on the unions and their request for more. And I want to come at it from this direction. I want to really throw a monkey wrench in the whole way we're looking at this thing. When those parliamentaries and our officials start taking a pay cut, and put some of that money and perks they are drawing on a monthly basis back into the coffers, and give that to the people who are actually doing the work in the community, driving our economy, the hard workers, then I want to hear something like that. But I'm not hearing that. I'm not hearing them saying, okay, it's hard time, we just come out of a pandemic and all these things, and we're under this kind of siege. Let's cut our pay, because they're taking home a lot of money and a lot of perks on top of that.
Yes.
So let's give some of that back. Let's put that back, because the real people that deserved it are those people on the ground who are doing all the hard work.
Okay.
When I start hearing that, then I'll take a different.
Thank you. We have to end it there. I'll just say this. One, a lot of those public servants, some are doing a lot of hard work and holding up the rest, and the rest are not.
But I do like the perspective. I do like looking at it from that angle as well.
But the other thing is, the government didn't call for that. I called for that.
I have a call on the line.
But I agree with you, like Keita.
Okay, Sean, we have a call on the line with us from Gasparilla. Good morning, caller. Good morning. Good morning.
Yes, morning.
Who really rooting for the government pensioners, both?
I beg your pardon, caller. Sorry, could you repeat that?
Who really rooting for the government pensioners? I mean, we haven't had an increase since, I think, to 15 to 16. What is really happening with us? Who really rooting for our cause?
Well,
could all your delve into that?
Yes, we can.
I can hear you, except this is even more complicated than wage negotiations.
Thank you, caller.
Thank you, caller. I don't even know exactly what would be the proper mechanism to address that. Like, I really don't. And I hesitate, but I suspect that not a lot of countries have a good solution to that problem.
Now, you see, the issue in relation to the NIS and the National Insurance Board, I don't think it was actually the amount of money that they received. It was the management within NIB. You see, a lot of things as well, such as demographics. We have a greater aging population as well as compared to those that are actually making contributions to NIS. So there are lots of arguments you can make. Now, in relation to increasing government pensions for those who worked in the public service, I completely understand that right now it's extremely difficult. I try and think about it and I find it very difficult to survive on that pension. However, I cannot see anytime soon a pension increase happening.
These are concepts and systems built at a time when the economy is very different and they don't scale well. They don't transition well from period to period. And I think it's a problem that Japan faces, Europe faces, America faces, Canada faces.
I do believe that looking apart from pension increases, we have a call on the line with us. I don't want to keep them waiting too long. There are other areas that they can look at as well.
Morning.
Good morning, caller.
Morning, guys. First of all, I want to say, I know I don't have much time because you have plenty callers. I must say that you all are I'm very impressed by the standard of your program. And I realize that you all do a lot of research with respect to before coming on air. And hats off to you, all right?
Thank you, caller.
Thank you.
There are many issues that I'm not in agreement with you with, but I want to say that with respect to old age pension and a raise, there cannot be any negotiation. There isn't any representative group. And what the government has to do is to just give a reasonable offer of an increase across the board. Right?
Yes, sir. That's a fair point.
With respect to trade unions, I think that they are very much dinosaurs in their thinking, those trade union leaders. And it's about time that they come to the table with something that is, I wouldn't say adversarial, no, but you come to negotiate and negotiate with international knowledge, with strong economic points. And besides wage increases, there are many other benefits that way surpasses the dollars and the cents.
Yes.
That they could also negotiate for. So I think that our trade union leaders need to be more up to date with respect to negotiations and international best practices. And I want to say, guys, I'll hang up and listen and keep on doing a wonderful job.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, caller. Thank you. And you made a very good point there. I think that the unions in themselves are dinosaurs.
Yep.
I want to expand on that point on pensions after this caller from Belmont. Good morning, caller. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
You're live.
Yes, morning to Keaton and Sean.
Good morning.
You're doing a great job.
Thank you.
I'll be very short. I do want you all to forget about Achille Chambers. We must keep that on the front burner forever and forever. These people must be brought to justice. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, caller.
Caller, I agree with you. We must not forget about Achille Chambers, but we also must not forget about Andrea Barrett and what happened afterwards. We must not forget about those 4 divers who lost their lives in the Paria accident. We must not forget about that Venezuelan baby who lost his life due to...
So many.
There's so many things that we can't forget about, but I understand where you're coming from, and we will not lose sight of that. We have another caller with us. Good morning, caller.
Hi guys, thanks. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm
morning.
Sorry that you just said that, baby. It was great to see Indira Sajawan, so thanks for that. Keaton, again, we come back to those unemployed UE students and those who return each year to no jobs.
Yeah.
Not only the doctors and lawyers, but those needed for a progressive society, industrial designers who could cater to the needs of our manufacturers. They
Yes.
are supposed to develop products and services needed, behavior change, all of those things, the public health experts that we would have needed during COVID. All of this was part of Manning's developmental needs vision for 2020, which is obviously a myopic vision for Rowley. But
Well, you can't have a goal of Vision 2020 when you're short-sighted. So.
Well, right, but at that time, Manning, had foresight, but it didn't come to pass because this government is myopic. But to touch on the MOU, remember that's just the intent,
Yes.
which will take forever to work out trade agreements, because remember the CSME took a long time, even with experts. And in order for anything to occur, CARICOM must be structured, as did the EU after Brexit. There must be new leadership, better port facilities, better packing, like Ira mentioned, a lot of things. But the major thing, political will. Or we can end up like Sri Lanka, who only took 30 months to be that way because of corruption, no energy,
Oh, I
poor
truly
agriculture.
hope
Just
not.
all the things we know. So thanks. Bye-bye.
Yes, thank you, caller.
truly hope.
But that is another example where we should take away important lessons from.
Truly hope we don't end up there. We have a caller on the line with us from San Fernando. Good morning, caller.
Guys, my third point.
Yes.
Yes. Welcome back.
Sean, I heard you what you talked about with respect to the unions. I tend to disagree. The unions have a job to do, and the state as the employer has a job to do. What's happening with the state is that the state needs to implement public sector reform to change the way they manage the public service. And because the employer is the one employing,
but I have
he is not changing. He's not changing the conditions of work.
But I have a question. Do you think the unions would accept changes in the condition of the work that they don't like?
If they should accept it.
No, if they would.
Would they?
These unions, no.
Exactly, because part of
However,
what...
Sean,
So what's the
however,
compromise?
The state has to do what they have to do.
I understand that. I am not letting the state off the hooker. Let's make it clear. Whatever the state's faults are is not absolved because the unions, I disagree with unions. It's not that I agree with one so I disagree with the other or vice versa.
But you put in a burden on the union that they are not responsible for.
Now, caller, I understand the point that you're making, and I agree that it's a two-way street. And at the same time, I'm not letting the government off the hook. I'm just stating that the approach of the unions needs to be far better. I'm not seeing them actually negotiating. I'm seeing them looking for a street fight. And the issue
they negotiated it, not Titan.
But at the same time, caller...
They went to the CPO.
Yes, but after that...
And the CPO said, okay, this is what I could offer you.
Right, but after that, did the unions continue negotiations? No, they just came out in a rage. The issue is that they need to rebuttal the offer. And apart from that, I agree with you that the government needs to do the work of the government, which is why, in my opinion, they need to take a hard stance as well. In my opinion, no work, no pay. That's just my point.
At the end of the day, the unions usually do this. They say, we have a problem. They don't necessarily give us any significant reasoning to justify why their problem is valid. We don't even need evidence. We just need reasoning. We don't get that. They tried that.
What we're doing, we're staying in this negotiating phase here when we need to actually move the public service to a better place.
I understand that, but the unions are an impediment to that. That is why Petrotrin was shut down. The government was negotiating with them for 3 years, It wasn't overnight. So,
okay, but however, I disagree with that because I was integrally involved in Petrotrin, Sean. And
okay.
Let me tell you this. The management allowed that company to reach where it reached. Full stop.
The problem is the government doesn't control the management. In those entities, they don't.
But yes, because the board, the management is controlled by the board, which is appointed by the government.
They don't. That's not how it works. Unfortunately.
Caller, I apologize for having to cut you. I want to continue this debate with you because unfortunately we're basically
out of time
for our calling segment. But please call in again tomorrow. Let's continue this discussion. It's healthy. it's good to get both perspectives and both sides of the debate. So I appreciate you taking the time and the opportunity, and thank you for calling back. Hold on your points, because we're going to continue that tomorrow. In relation to pensions, I mentioned earlier there was a point I wanted to make. If it is the government can't increase pensions, because the cost of living has gone up, it's very difficult for pensions now. There are other areas and other avenues in which they can probably ease the burden on pensioners. And that is, for example, we already have a 30% rebate on electricity bills that is $300 or less. Maybe for 65 years and older, you can look at special rates as well. It's just something to explore. WASA you pay, I think WASA you pay every 3 months, if I'm not mistaken.
I think one of the key things is what they really need to do is assess all of these subsidies and various grants, etc., and determine which ones are effective and which ones are not. And by effective, I mean getting the money to the people that need it as opposed to people that just claim it.
Pensioners do have access to the public healthcare system, and they do have access to CDAP. Difficulty with CDAP is that you actually do not get a lot of drugs. There is a shortage.
Yeah,
I see. But there are other avenues that they can look at as well, because I don't think that they're going to see an increase in their pension anytime soon. But nevertheless, I wish to thank all callers this morning for your contribution to the program.
Just before that, with regards to our first caller, I believe also from San Fernando, yes, with your point with Dr. Israel, with regards to the marine and the airport, it's not that she disagrees with the projects, she disagrees with how it's being handled, because those types of projects are supposed to go through the THA, and the THA is being bypassed, and the THA is supposed to be held to account for what goes on in Tobago by their voters, so they have to be able to, at the very least, know what's going on, and they don't even have that, I guess you could say, luxury as it was. It goes back to how Tobago's affairs were being managed under a singular party running both houses. And just also to point out, she once again, Dr. Bezra once again complimented the government on the communication and the working relationship and having the discussion. She did not have anything bad to say about central government in that regard.
I think the point that the caller from San Fernando was trying to make in relation to that, at least I hope this is what you were making, is that, yes, I think he did all that, but the approach on the part of the THA and the THA members is that let us not practice or do the same thing that our predecessors did. Whilst we have to make comments, and whilst and government, we also have to rebuttal the stances of the opposition. Let us try and actually show what we're doing and prove what we're doing.
When NIDCO is blocking out people's access to their homes without approval, without any legal authority, the problem is, Keaton, they don't have legal authority to do what they're doing.
What I'm telling you, we understand. I understand that, and I think the caller understands that. I understand that for sure.
Because,
I'm just saying,
because Dr. Israel did say they want the marina.
Remember,
it's just how.
Remember what my point was as well, and we've made this point constantly, is the way you communicate things. It's often, sometimes, how you say something, not necessarily what you say. So that could be the point as well, because, for example, the first thing that I said, and I hope this is not to be in 6 months' time if I ask again, what are the achievements of the PDP's THA? The first thing was we've paved roads. I don't want that to necessarily be the first thing on the list of achievements.
I get that. In a year, yes. Yeah. 4 months when you have no money, I could understand. I could understand, especially when you are trying to address 20-year-old issues that might seem small to us, but that are big to the voters. But I will say this. If it was that small, then why didn't the Tobago Council do it?
Well, fair enough, my friend. Anyway, folks, that's all the time we have for this morning. Thank you very much for all our callers who contributed, and thank you very much to Dr. Sijiwan for joining us this morning for the discussion. Hopefully, we'll get to continue that soon. But I'm Keaton Shah, and as we begin the last week in May, I wish you all the best in your daily endeavors. Sean Michael Small, thank you very much.
Be your brother's keeper, people. Remember, be your brother's keeper.
And remember, today is a day to have a good day. Hopefully tomorrow morning, Sean and I will see you again. Bye-bye.